This is Ffrith in North Wales. It's a small village of about 400 people with a main street, about 3 other streets, no shops and 2 pubs. So they've got their priorities right here. Anyway, back in the 1960s, in the back garden of this house and a few other houses down the street, some local archaeologists dug some trenches. Underneath that concrete and under that glass house, they discovered a series of walls and some bits of pot and tile and some Roman coins, and they thought they'd got a Roman bathhouse. But is it? And if so, what's it doing here? Time Team have got just 3 days to find out. Ffrith is here in North Wales, just across the border from Chester, the centre of Roman occupation in the northwest. But the reason that the local archaeologists want us to dig here is because they think this is really special and it's never been properly excavated. Harry, have you any idea how important your garden actually is?
No idea at all. I just believe there's some Roman walls underneath and that's about it, really.
What have we got?
Well, we've got a collection, as Harry says, of Roman walls. Excavations carried out here in the 60s, and we found various plans which show possibly some rectangular buildings, possibly a circular building, possibly a building with an apse on it, a semicircular projection on one side. But the fact of the matter is, we don't really know what the building is.
What's that look like to you, Mick?
Well, it's been suggested it's a bathhouse, but I think the problem is all the plans are different. And really, if we're going to understand it, we ought to re-excavate it and see what it looks like in the ground.
There you go.
We're beginning to dismantle Harry's garden. It's taking a bit of time because of the path and the stuff around it. Next door, Phil's moving a bit faster. He just had grass to go through.
Ooh, ooh!
The fence between the 2 gardens just has to go. It'll be easier to work without it. The village itself runs north-south, and the main street follows the line of Offa's Dyke. The dyke, built in the 8th century, is now under these houses. Behind them is the village playing field. It was scheduled as an ancient monument because Roman material was found along the edges. The authorities have given us permission to have a look at it.
Well, look, these thicker dots are presumably where they've got higher readings. It's resistance survey,
Right.
so that could be stone buildings.
It's pouring down now, so the incident room is suddenly very busy.
Yeah, well, it's the problem when we're actually outside.
Stuart and Henry are looking at the overall topography.
So this is a 3D map of the area. Was it happy?
Victor, Ray-San and Sally, a Roman baths expert, are looking at what a bathhouse might have looked like.
Example we found, which is Ashted. It's got the most similar layout, although it's half the size.
And John has now got some geophys results for the playing field.
These are the results from 20 years ago. That's our area we've surveyed. Now, if you compare the two, take their results. It's a perfect match.
Very, very similar, aren't they?
I mean, it really is good.
Yes.
Because from what we know, in the 60s, they stopped here.
Right.
That over there is brand spanking new virgin ground, never been dug before. And that will answer the question of all this rubble. It will give us a continuation of the wall. It will also give us the inside of the building, and also it will give us a brand spanking new set of finds.
This is the wall Phil's found. In the 60s, another wall was found in this corner. Phil's new trench will provide the missing link between the two. If this lines up, we'll either have a circular building or one with an apse, a semicircular projection on one side. Any finds associated with it will give us a date for this wall. At the moment, we've no way of even knowing whether it's Roman or not. So, OK, the Roman army might have been here, but why here?
There are a number of possibilities. First of all, Ffrith is actually on the line of the main Roman road, which runs from the legionary fortress at Chester over there, down through the centre and up through this valley, on into central Wales and eventually the west coast. So,
out in the playing field, Helen's opened a very large trench, but has very little to show for it.
We were thinking, were we coming down onto something structural or not?
Looks horribly natural. Yeah,
It looks like something you might quarry out to build a road.
Well,
to me.
exactly.
But we did have a bit of luck with some Roman finds.
Yeah.
Well, from here.
Yeah, from the top layers.
That's our star one.
That's
Bit
your
of Roman
star
pot.
piece of Roman.
But this was from very much higher up. This is from the more like the ridge and furrow.
See,
bottom
I'd
of
have
the
thought
ridge
that
and
was
furrow
probably a
level.
flower pot.
And here we are, a nice piece of Opus sigmoidum, quite a big bit, really.
Right. Oh,
You can
yes.
see all the flecks in it.
Yeah. That's looking like proper archaeology now.
Yeah, I think we've got undisturbed Roman wall there and undisturbed Roman floors at the bottom there.
Yeah, undisturbed Roman, but it's undisturbed Roman only since the mid-1960s when they dug it up last time.
Yeah, okay.
Don't you think this line of stones here is very similar to what you've got in there? It's probably the same line.
Ooh.
In other words, whatever that wall is, it's not going anywhere else, but it's coming down here.
It does line up, does it?
Well, we need to get Henry in, don't we, to ask him to look at it. Look, if you stand here, look, you can see the shed.
Hey?
If you stand over here, you can see the corner of the shed, look. So it must be going under this garage, mustn't it? Come out under the fence.
If he's right, it's not a bathhouse, it's a wall at least 15 metres long.
And it looks more like, again, like as if it's a field wall, doesn't it?
Who done it?
That's sort of here before the houses are put here.
Don't curve either, does it?
No, it doesn't.
We open up the wall that Mick tripped over. It does seem to line up with Phil's and is on the same height. In the extension to Phil's trench, he's found the wall, but he's also found this ditch. Inside the ditch, we're coming across a range of good finds, and they're all Roman.
Look at that, you see the little projection
Yeah.
on the side?
Yes.
And then the thinness of the glass, and also, I think you can make out some little air bubbles in it, very characteristic of Roman glass. What else? And the star exhibit, a Roman brooch. Oh yes, that's P-shaped, a P-shaped brooch. There should be another one of these on this side. So there's a gap down the middle, they join at the bottom for the tail here. But it is an unusual type of brooch, and I think it probably belongs to the late 2nd century and on into the 3rd. Okay.
These finds give us some relief, but they date the ditch in Phil's trench. The wall is still a mystery.
I'm absolutely happy in my own mind that that's Roman. I don't know quite...
The ditch is Roman, but how can he get a date for the wall? Digging here might give us a point where this wall and this ditch cross. That way, we'll be able to tell if the wall's Roman or if it comes after the Roman period.
What we've got is this sort of rectilinear arrangement.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's reported Roman finds just over the road there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a positive result. I think we ought to
Pop a hole in and have a look.
Which is what we do. And pretty soon, there's quite a crowd around having a look.
I'd say you've got a good one there.
Looks like a mortar floor.
It does, doesn't it? It's nice and thick, isn't it?
And look, I was going to say that where I dug down in that hole
Yeah.
there, it's still carrying on down. But
And this is a wall.
God,
Harry? Tracy, if anybody deserves a drink, it's you two after what we've done to your garden. Wait, have you seen this? This is our star find so far. It's a dice, like a Snakes and Ladders dice, that's not been thrown for 1,800 years. Mind you, if we'd been chucking it, given our luck over the last couple of days, what would we have got? Ones and twos?
oh, come on, Tony. Well, at least 2s and 3s, I would have thought, you know.
3 days ago, this was our starting point. A map of stone walls joined together by archaeologists and historians in a way that suggested a very big bath complex in this area. We now know that they were wrong. Most of these walls weren't even Roman, except for this one. But then, just when we thought that was it... Bridge, things starting to come together in your trench?
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Look, we've got a Roman ditch coming up here.
Yeah.
Just uncover what looks like a Roman post hole, and the piece de resistance is this piece of daub.
Daub as in wattle and daub?
Yeah.
So where would the wattle have gone?
2 pieces would have fitted just in there.
It is extraordinary how things always start to come together towards the end of day 3. And it being day 3, we've got, as usual, 3/4 of the local population. But what's so strange is that in addition to all the things that we've got in Bridget's Trench, in Matt's Trench, we've got something similar. What have you got for us?
Well, we're down on the bottom clay floor here, and if you look really carefully, you can see these circular, evenly spaced stains, and that's where wooden stakes would have been, and they'd have held up a small wall, a partition wall or something like that.
So there is Roman here. It's just much more ephemeral than we thought it would be. It's wattle and daub and mud and post holes. It's not made of stone.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm over the moon. I mean, we came looking for a bathhouse, and it's always nice to be able to put the record straight. We now know that there is no bathhouse. And then to cap it all, we've been able to confirm some of their results, which was this wonderful stone-built wing of a Roman building, tessellated floor, lovely floors. It's been, yeah, it's stonker, it really has.
What a great optimist you are.
I am.
What is it that we've got?
What we've got is a whole complex of buildings here. Quite what it is more difficult to interpret because it's clearly not a Roman villa, and neither is it something like a Roman fort. Well, Stuart came up with the idea that this is actually the nearest supply of limestone to Chester. And why that's important is you need vast amounts of limestone to make lime for the mortar and the plaster and everything when you're building the permanent fort there. And you'd need a gang of labourers basically to do that. So we probably ought to think of this as some sort of industrial military compound of people who are producing all that material to send back over to Chester, and I quite like that idea.
It's wonderful having a quiet little conversation at the end of the day with just the 5 of us and 350 local people. Go away!
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. Please join us on this exciting journey. We need more support to make more episodes.
Today, the ruins of Tregruk Castle overlook the tranquil valleys of South Wales. But 700 years ago, this area was one of the most turbulent places in Britain, the Welsh Marches. This was a militarised zone, ruled over by the Marcher Lords, powerful English barons who built a network of impregnable castles to keep the Welsh natives in check. But not enough to keep an invading army of archaeologists at bay. And anyway, we've been given a warm, if slightly misty welcome here by the castle's current owner, David Williams. How long has this place been in your family?
Since 1554, there was a gentleman called Roger Williams, acquired the estate, the lands and the castle.
But it hasn't always looked like this, has it? I can see a lot of these stumps are really quite fresh.
It was a complete keep full of trees of Norway spruce here until about 2 years ago. I've always grown up with the feeling and knowledge that you wouldn't touch anything here.
Yeah.
It's a scheduled monument. As far as I'm concerned, nothing has ever been disturbed, so this is a very exciting time.
This really is an extraordinary place, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've seen some castles in my time, but this one presents a real mystery. If you look at the plan here, you've got all the things you find in a standard castle. You've got a gatehouse, you've got a tower, you've got a really long curtain wall all the way around the side, but you've got this big blank space in the middle. It's in the same sort of ballpark as Windsor Castle. It's a huge site.
Mick, what do you think was going on inside this middle bit?
Well, there's lots of stuff we don't have. We'd expect to have a big hall, probably other halls, kitchens. We'd expect to have private accommodation, bakehouses, breweries, stables. We don't know anything about that at all.
Because getting to grips with Tregruk Castle is a huge challenge, a whopping 13,000 square metre challenge to be precise. So far, we've begun to tackle the entrance through the gateway, hoping to discover more about the castle layout and any finds which tell us when it was occupied. And having only just launched our attack, Phil's already scratched the surface.
Wow, it is like a roadway. Very, very hard. The question is, how old is it?
Exactly.
And it's the same at Matt's end of the gateway.
I mean, there's road stuff, you know, roads, stones and stuff right below the soil, so it might be worth me having a bit of a scratch around first, I think.
Things are really hotting up as far as our archaeologists are concerned. We've got a trench in at either end of the gatehouse, but about 100 metres away, two of our archaeologists have sloped off into this rather bizarre little cave.
Yeah, but it's not a little cave, Tony. It's much more interesting than that. You look above us, look.
Oh, is it, what do you call it, a garderobe? A toilet?
It's a medieval toilet. Yeah, no, it's a cracking example, isn't it?
How does it work?
Well, presumably over the 4 holes you can see up there would have been the wooden seats, and the contents would have accumulated in the pit that we're standing in.
If we're in the pit, where does all the stuff go?
Well, presumably it gathers in the pit, and it's either goes out through an arch over there, or people come in here and clear it out from time to time.
Some of the best stonework in the whole castle. You've got arches above us.
I've learned from you that over the centuries, people drop things down the toilet.
Absolutely, and they don't
It's not
retrieve
just you and
them.
me.
No, they don't retrieve them.
So you want to dig it?
Yeah.
It's nice to see a man who's so excited by his work. Mind you, he's not the one who's going to have to shift through centuries of human waste. But if Mick's right, we might get valuable dating evidence to tell us when the castle was occupied.
But these are being covered over, look, you see, they're that much fresher. Look at that crispness of that line there, isn't that beautiful?
So what have we got, Steve?
Well, an interesting collection. This is a ridge tile off the top of the roof.
That's fantastic, because we've got accounts of tilers working here quite early on in the accounts, about 1305-ish.
Marvellous. This is late 1200s, early 1300s.
Oh, brilliant.
According to our dating, we've got coin dating for that.
Extraordinary, isn't it, David? What do you think about all this?
It puts everything in perspective. It brings it alive, all the accounts that you read over this period of time, and now there's dates, particularly that Steve is able to put things to.
I'm glad that David's easily pleased, because it's the end of day one, and I'm afraid a single tile won't solve what's going on in that vast interior. But at least we seem to be making progress, and we're finally opening a trench inside it. Mick, another trench?
Yeah, based on the geophysics.
Well, looking at that geophysics, I can't see that much to put a trench in for.
Look, we've put the results on Henry's model, which is absolutely fantastic, and the high resistance there is in red. Now, the problem is, could that be building? Could just be the tree roots, could be the geology.
So, in other words, we're really putting this trench in to test the geophysics so we can see whether it would apply elsewhere on this site.
That is.
At least, if we have any certainty at all, it must be the perimeter of the castle. So, hold off the desperation. But this can't bode well. Open a trench in the evening, close it in the morning. However, we are now opening another trench where the ground level changes.
Start from here and we'll just go up over until we get to the top, go over the top of the slope, break of the slope.
To see whether that slope is evidence of activity in the interior.
It's a bit of pot, and there's another piece here. They're from different pots, but that's more than we had from up there, isn't it? We're on a winner.
And it's already paying dividends. Yesterday, our trenches were concentrated in the gatehouse, where we were beginning to find a road surface. But Phil didn't think it was the original medieval pathway into the castle. And this morning, things seem to have got even more complicated.
When I looked at this, I rather suspect you'd think the same as I did. What the hell is that? And so I bring you two esteemed authorities, and you haven't got the foggiest idea.
And it's one of those, isn't it?
So, how many PhDs does it take to identify a piece of stone? Obviously more than 3. I know we haven't found all that much pottery, but the stuff that we have found is virtually all 14th century. Why are you pulling a face? How does that tie in with what we've got?
No, I mean, I almost felt that you must have made that up to make me pleased, because the detailed accounts start at 1301 and they go on to 1342.
What was happening here in the early 14th century?
Well, there was a lot of building work going on, and right down to the last well rope, we've got the detail.
So who was instructing these people to buy all the well ropes and stuff?
Amazingly, they were mostly powerful women. We start off with Joan of Acre, who's a daughter of Edward I, apparently the most spirited, the most independent of all his daughters. Now, her youngest daughter, Elizabeth, she goes on to inherit Tregruk, and she, again, is the most amazing woman. By the time she's 27, she's had 3 children by 3 different husbands. They're all dead, and soon after that, she takes a vow of chastity to ensure that she's not pushed into another marriage.
But do you think she would have really been in charge during those years, or do you think there would have been another man in the background?
Well, I think that she'd have been calling the shots, because in some of the accounts, this last one here, it says that there's new buildings at Tregruk. It's all done according to the lady's wishes, and the lady at that point has got to be Elizabeth.
What sort of lifestyle do you think she'd have led, Ray?
Well, she certainly knew how to throw a party. Just look at this menu from a Christmas feast, 1326. Just look at this. It looks as though they're eating half the bird population of South Wales. Look at some of the things.
You've got swans, herons, bitterns, egrets, capons, geese, hens, chickens, partridges, something called clels, woodcocks.
Yeah, it's a bit of a meat feast, isn't it?
So it seems that life inside the castle was quite fun. But that's a little at odds with what I'd first been led to believe. Situated bang in the centre of the marches, Tregruk was surrounded by hordes of warlike Welsh, who notoriously were the deadliest archers in Britain. Yesterday you had a theory that there was a big pit here and that the entrance to the castle originally would have been up there somewhere. Does that theory still hold?
Absolutely, it really holds good. But what we've done is the most important new discovery is this whacking great wall here, because this wall helps us to get from inside the castle way up there to the outside. This must be some major support for a drawbridge or a bridge that is going to get us from that level out there.
Does this archaeology work for you?
I think Phil's got it right. It's either part of the abutment for a bridge, maybe part of a drawbridge.
But geographically, it seems so weird to me. If you look at that level there, imagine something there or higher coming out in this direction. It's more like a diving board than an exit. You just plummet off the edge of the hill.
Doesn't make any sense at all. The point of access is right up here above our heads. It goes into nowhere.
So I think I kind of get this. The walkway, drawbridge and pit idea seems plausible enough, but something's obviously missing, because the entrance couldn't have led out into thin air. It's now nearly the end of day 3, and the team have finished working outside the Lord's Tower. Well, it's a shame we didn't get more small finds, but the architecture we revealed was really phenomenal.
Just look at the quality of the architecture in front of us there. You've got a door, you've got a portcullis, the slot is just above us, you've got another door as well.
And what would have been inside?
Well, you're looking at serious medieval high-quality living. You've got lots of rooms, chambers, fireplaces, windows. You've got that fantastic, exquisite octagonal chamber over there. The Lord even had a little hand basin to wash his hands in.
And at the other end of the castle, Stuart thinks he's finally conquered the main gatehouse. Well, we started out thinking we got a castle full of soldiers and we ended up with a pleasure dome. How do you feel about that?
No, I'm just extremely excited by your visit here, and everything I've seen has brought the whole castle alive.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Want us to make more episodes? Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. And you get to have your say in the process as we develop new sites.
Look at that, one of the finest manor houses in Britain. It was built for a powerful family, played host to Charles I. You can imagine how excited the archaeologists were when they discovered the moat of this Grade 1 listed building. Except there was one tiny problem. Look at this map the archaeologists drew. There's the house, here's the moat, and does it go up to here and then turn around the house? No, it goes hurtling off in that direction. This is the direction the moat's going in, but what on earth's going on? What's it protecting? Well, there have been several theories, from a Roman fort to a royal court, from a chapel to a heavily fortified cattle enclosure. And we've got just 3 days to rip up this field and find out what this has got to do with that. Llancaiach is just north of Cardiff, sitting on a plateau of land in the middle of the rolling South Wales valleys. The earthworks we're here to investigate were first recorded in the 1970s, but so far all attempts to establish exactly what they are have failed.
Where he's coming in now is where that ditch was shown coming through there.
But it makes sense to assume they've got something to do with next-door Llancaiach Manor, where the powerful Pritchard family once entertained Charles I. And the manor itself, now a museum and education centre, is also a bit of a mystery, because no one knows if it was the first house to be built on this site. So, do we have an earlier moated house, or even a Roman fort in this enormous field? It's a big question, and for once we're not waiting for Geophysics to answer it.
There are definite earthworks there, definite earthworks.
Because some of the team have decided to break with tradition and open a trench immediately. Look at that! Not only a trench, but a big one. Here are the three wise monkeys of archaeology. Ben, how come we got a trench in already?
Well, Stuart had a wander about this morning and he picked up these very low earthworks, but they seem to line up with a possible moat. So we thought we'd go for it. We couldn't wait any longer.
A couple of years ago, they put a trench across where they think the earthworks were, and they found 2 rows of stones, 2 sort of banks of stones with a post hole in the middle. Until we open up a bigger area, we won't know whether we can identify these stone rows, whether we can find any more post holes. We've got to think big.
Surely this is going to be the easiest dig we've ever done. There's the house, there's the moat, something in the middle, bosh, go home.
Yeah, except the term moat on an Ordnance Survey map covers a multitude of sins.
What does he mean?
Well, all it means really is that somebody's seen a bit of a depression. I mean, first of all, what is a moat? It could mean a water-filled ditch, it could just mean a dry ditch, it could be something that's functional, defensive, it could be for fish, it could just be something that looks nice in your grounds. I mean, we've got no idea what this thing is until we dig it.
So our first trench has gone in over the tantalisingly visible bit of the L-shaped earthworks that everyone is calling a moat.
In this first trench, it's always so important. I reckon you learn more from that first trench than you do all the other ones you put through. It gives you that first impression of the site.
We suspect this earthwork may only be one corner of a much larger feature, with some potentially stunning archaeology in the middle. We need to find out as much as we can about the house. And the most obvious thing about Llancaiach Manor is that it's a house of wealth and power. Which is probably not that surprising, considering it belonged to a powerful Welsh dynasty called the Pritchards. I know it's early days yet, but what do you think might be the relationship between this house and that field?
If we've got what looks to be a moated enclosure that's heading out across the field, it's always made me wonder whether there's the possibility that there's an earlier building that's there. We just need to try and see if we can find it.
So could our potential moat enclose the ancestral home of the Pritchard family? Well, archaeological digs have shown time and time again that posh houses are built on top of or next to slightly less posh houses belonging to an earlier generation of the family. And it seems unlikely that a house as grand as the current Llancaiach was the first to be built on this site.
It's as though you might have had a big post in there.
Yeah.
And Ben and Phil have now hit the first evidence of the mysterious earthworks that promise so much.
That bank out there is 1 row of stones. This could be the post hole in the middle.
Yeah.
And then we go that way and we have another row of stones, which is the other bank. Who knows, Geophysics might be able to track it all the way across.
It's lunchtime day 1. We've put in our first trench. It was over where this moat-like feature is supposed to be, and sure enough, it's there. But the problem with this moat on the maps is that it looks vaguely L-shaped, nothing more. But now John has done the geophys. Is everything clear?
As clear as mud.
What do you mean?
Well, I've got an old stream bed for you. Ridge and furrow ploughing, a few lines, nothing that looks like a moat ditch, and I can't see any evidence for an enclosure.
I think we now know even less about this site than we did when we got here. Look at that. Looks like someone sneezed on it in black and white.
Yeah, that's not quite the idea of geophysics, is it? There's nothing in this trench that looks terribly moat-like, and it ought to be here. There's no moat.
Oh dear. So the moat, the reason we came here, doesn't exist. But all due credit to John, the geophys has thrown up something unexpected that has got Ben and the team intrigued.
There's some sort of linear feature, a ditch or something like that, running up here, turning a corner and coming down here. This is enclosing a very large area. And that ties in quite nicely with something that Phil's got at the end of the trench here. We think we've got a feature running in that direction. But until we get a section across that ditch, we can't tell what date it is. It might be nothing at all to do with the medieval period. It could be something much earlier.
And what's intriguing about this newly discovered enclosure is that it and what's inside it appear to be under, in other words earlier, than the medieval ridge and furrow ploughing.
Oh well, let's have a go. Carry on and we'll see what we get.
So as well as investigating it in Trench 1, we're opening a second trench further along its northern boundary. This morning, I thought this big field presented us with one of the easiest, most straightforward time teams we'd done in a long time. 9 hours later, I'm not so sure.
What the Royal Commission saw were two banks and a slightly hollowed area in the middle. And I think what has created one of the banks is this big stony feature running through here.
So a lot of our effort is now shifting to the area immediately around the standing Tudor manor house, as we try to find any previous buildings that may have stood on this site. The test pits are so close to the house because geophys have already eliminated an area further to the south that Stuart thought may contain a hendra, an early Welsh settlement. We're putting in a couple of trenches here because we'd expect an earlier manor to have a defensive wall and a gatehouse, because during medieval times this was the wild Welsh West.
Isn't that wonderful? That looks very prehistoric, and it looks like it's tending more towards the Bronze Age than Iron Age. But let's have the...
I was going to say, let's have the local knowledge.
It's got to be Bronze Age, isn't it? Bronze Age, yeah.
That is stunning.
That's really something. I've never dug a piece of Bronze Age pot up in my life, and I've been digging over 50 years.
This pot suggests that people may have been living here during the Bronze Age. And when you consider the whole population of the UK 4,000 years ago was only about 200,000, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. But just as I'm beginning to think this is one of the most frustrating sights we've encountered in a long time, we make our first proper medieval find.
Gentlemen, I think that might interest you something.
Oh, that's a bit nice, isn't it?
This little coin is a major discovery because we suspect it dates to before the time of the current manor house.
That's a little penny, isn't it? Long cross? Long cross penny.
Got the cross on one side, hasn't it?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, because if you have a close look at it, there appears to be a cross on both sides.
Let me put my glasses on.
Look.
And would you believe it, it's not from the garden, it's from the moat field that we dismissed as having nothing medieval in it. It's the beginning of day 3 of our dig in South Wales. Ow. And it's not just the weather that's taken a turn for the worse.
Have you started then?
Well, we'd like to start if you tell us where you'd like us to dig.
Well, you're there.
The mood's also darker amongst the diggers.
Yes, but it's where that, you know, we can't dig it all.
In spite of our best efforts, we can't find any evidence of an earlier manor here at Llancaiach. But we're not giving up yet, even if it means we have to turn the whole garden upside down. Nigel, you've got a dendro date for us?
I have, and that date is AD 1548 to 1565.
1548 to 1565, and you're pretty certain about that?
Yeah, absolutely, it's black and white.
OK, thanks ever so much, mate. Bye. You murmured the word later. Yeah? What do you mean by that?
I mean, sort of all the things in the sort of commission volume suggesting around the 1530s, so 1548 to sort of a little bit later than we thought, but we, you know, got a date.
What does that date tell you about the house?
It tells us that the house is more old-fashioned than we thought, really.
And you've been looking after this house and doing all this reconstruction for ages, but you've never actually known how old the house was.
We just... all we knew was around the 1530s. Well, you know, that's just fantastic to know. That's the thing, because we've never known.
With this date of roughly 1550, we've at least answered one of Diane's questions about Llancaiach. It also makes the coins we're finding in the next door field all the more intriguing, because they predate the standing house. As well as this fantastic find, we've also discovered coins that are over 100 years earlier than the current house.
Well, what you can say with absolute certainty is that people have been here for at least 4,000 years. And we do have a lot of ditches. They've been redug. They've been redug by hand. What is absolutely indisputable is that we've got one piece of early Bronze Age pot. That's going to take us back to about 2000 BC.
So thanks to Phil and his diggers' dogged determination, Diane has got a story to tell about this field. Just not the one she was expecting.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.